Greetings to all my fellow watch enthusiasts on YouTube and Facebook and wherever else this video is being seen and shared. Celine Driver once again, bringing you a comparison video. I just recently did a unboxing and review of this third generation Hammerhead, which may or may not be a Father's Day present, depending on if my father likes it or not, and thus may or may not be in my collection. And I know I've seen a lot of messages on places like Zelos Timekeepers on Facebook and other similar forums, places like that, wanting to know the difference between a third generation Hammerhead and, say, a first generation or a second generation Hammerhead. So I thought I would do a quick video that I could, if I ever see a question like that, I could post a link and they could see for themselves. And I've got to say, there's, in terms of measurements and things like that, the numbers, I'll give you the numbers. In terms of measurements and stuff, there aren't really too many differences between a first generation watch, a second, and a third, with the exception of two measurements: thickness of the watch and depth rating, or water resistance, if you will. But let's get into it. I have in front of me here, I have two watches from my collection. I have this first generation Hammerhead, which is not set correctly. There we go. Makes me feel better. First generation Hammerhead in steel. Now, these watches were made in steel. They were made in bronze. They were made in titanium. And I have one of the, well, I have two bronze. I have one steel, this one, and one titanium. There was also a Damascus version, which I'm still chasing as of the time I'm making this video, but I'll find one someday. Pardon me. This has a Damascus bezel, unmarked bezel, just decorative, rotating, unidirectional bezel. There weren't too many of these watches made with this bezel. I really like this watch, very proud of it. I think this was the second Zelos I ever purchased. The first one was a bronze meteorite first generation Hammerhead, so this was number 2. Anyway, it's a beautiful watch. Very heavy too, mounted on that steel bracelet. That's a very heavy watch. Anyway, second generation watch, not exactly a Hammerhead. It is a Hammerhead chronograph. I don't have access to a second generation Hammerhead. That's over at my father's house, and I didn't want to do anything that might spoil the surprise of this one. But a second generation Hammerhead nonetheless. It is a little bit thicker than a standard Hammerhead of this generation, owing to the fact that it's a chronograph. The chronograph movement does add a little thickness on the bottom, about, about 2 millimeters. So, but other than that, it's basically a Hammerhead. It's the same style. You see the helium release valve there. I really like the aesthetic of this watch. I enjoy wearing it, even though it is one of the biggest watches I own in terms of thickness. The only watch I have that's thicker than this is my Abyss 3. And that's about, well, another 1.5 millimeters thicker than this one. And of course, we have the third generation Hammerhead here, which I just reviewed, and was bought ostensibly to be a Father's Day present for my father. If he doesn't like it, I'm going to end up with it. So win-win for me either way. If he likes it, son did good. If he doesn't like it, son gets a watch, and he gets another present that I know he likes because I've given it to him before. Just picking up the first generation watch compared to the third, you can see the similarities in design. For instance, the bracelets are very similar in design. In fact, they could almost be identical, although I'm pretty sure they don't fit in the other watch. The clasps are much different. This third generation Hammerhead has the spring-loaded micro adjuster that you have to get in there. This one has a ratcheting micro. I actually prefer this clasp over any of the other clasps that Zelos has come out with. All you have to do is push that button, these two buttons in, and you have a ratcheting clasp with, well, let's see, let's count them off. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 adjustments plus fully closed, so 5. And it's still a pretty secure stainless steel, milled out, fold over, locking clasp. But I like this one. It's much easier to adjust this on the fly. You can see the artwork is a little different. First generation is not as three-dimensional, obviously, as this more engraved style, but still with the two hammerhead sharks. Size-wise, they are right there with each other. They're both 44 millimeter cases. So they both line up in terms of case size. You can see the first generation bezel is a little bit thicker than the third. They're both 44 millimeter cases. They're both 22 millimeter lugs. The third generation is actually a little shorter tip to tip, 48 millimeter versus 49 millimeter for the first gen. Where they really, really differ is thickness. As you can see, the first generation here on the left is significantly thicker at 17 millimeters versus 15.25 for the third generation. Now, 1.75 millimeters doesn't sound like a lot, but you can see definitely a difference. And also, don't forget, that's a much more pronounced domed crystal on the first generation watch. Also, the other major difference is depth rating, water resistance rating. This watch is rated to 1,000 meters. This watch is rated to 300 meters. And you can see that in the thicker case designed to stand up to higher water pressure. If you compare it to the chronograph, again, not the fairest comparison because obviously the chronograph movement does add quite a bit of bulk to the watch, but they are the same case size at 44 millimeter. They're also the same lug width at 22. Surprisingly, they're also the same on the tip to tip at 48 millimeter. Although you can see that the case flank is much, much more pronounced on the second generation watch. The second generation non-chronograph is 18 millimeters thick versus 15.25 millimeter thick for the third generation. You can definitely see that thickness. Now, the chronograph is 20.5 millimeters thick, so it's a whole nother universe. The bezels look very similar. This bezel is definitely a lot shorter than the first generation, as you can see here. The bezel height is much higher on this one, although the case thickness is smaller on the first generation. And again, this watch is rated to 1,000 meters. This watch is rated to 300 meters. So again, the big difference between Gen 1 and 2 and Gen 3 is thickness and water resistance rating. Otherwise, they are very similar. You can definitely see the lineage. You know, the faceting of the cases, the way the lugs are shaped, the way that the bracelets drop straight down away from the case. They are very, very similar watches. You can definitely see the family lineage on all these watches. So that's a quick comparison between Gen 1 Hammerhead, Gen 2 Hammerhead, albeit a chronograph to be sure, and a Gen 3 Hammerhead. You can definitely see the evolution, the lineage, the similarities, and basically there's only two real differences between the two watches: water resistance rating and thickness. That's what the Gen 3 Hammerhead was designed for, not to be quite as thick of a watch so that it could appeal to a broader audience. And I think Elshin has obviously succeeded here. So I hope you enjoyed this quick comparison between the three generations of Hammerhead. I was happy to do it. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments, where, of course, we know I read every comment, I respond to every comment, and I block trolls and delete their comments. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up on the video. That does help with the YouTube algorithms, which also brings more people to the channel, and hopefully people will subscribe to the channel so I can grow this channel a little bit more. If you are new to the channel, please feel free to watch as many videos as you want. I have hundreds of them. Please, on the way out, though, click that subscribe button. When you do that, also click the bell icon next to it, so that when I upload new content, you are alerted to that. And when I do my live streams, which I do every Wednesday afternoon from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, or at other times during the week when time and opportunity avail themselves to me, you will be alerted to those events as well. Meanwhile, it is a crazy old world out there. I bid you to be safe. Be careful, stay well, stay healthy. I'll see you soon.